Well, conditionality is just causality in words without time.
Talking with famous people.
I think you're kind of slightly decapitating TE into something smaller than it actually is.
I think you're giving it too much credit.
Yeah, I agree.
Why? I think TI is getting too much credit.
Look, TI gets no credit for effectiveness or doing shit, but TE gets no credit for being smart. It's like a contract they handed me.
Well, that's because it's bad TE.
It's because it's bad TI.
No, it's
Yeah,
bad
it's bad TI.
That's
Right.
what you're saying. You're saying it's bad TI, therefore it's bad TE. No.
When the TE is wrong, it's bad TE.
It's great TE because almost everybody signs that fucking thing.
That's some FI bullshit.
It's great TE. If I'm an admin person and I get a bunch of my employees to sign away a bunch of rights they can't sign away, and they feel constrained by it, then it's good TE. It's good TE because it's goal linked. It doesn't matter if it's TI smart. It's good TE because it's not our goals that are being furthered.
Yeah.
But you're saying feel constrained.
Yeah, right. Because it's TE. It works on FI people for sure. They go, oh, some TE. I feel constrained by it. It's bad TE for me.
No, but if they are such that TE, that's how they want to live. They don't feel constrained by it. We feel constrained by it because we hate that shit when it's bad.
The TE is the people who made the contract for the teachers. It doesn't apply to themselves. It only applies to the people they hire. And it affords some argumentational leverage, basically.
Yeah, but you can see the person that's just hiring you, paying you cash now, that person clearly see how dumb it is.
I mean, that's the thing. TE is very good no matter how fucking clumsy and stupid it is. If it accomplishes what the person who's doing it wants it to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but oh what?
That's what we say. we say so what?
Oh.
Right.
Guess we're talking past each other then.
No, we're not.
No, we're on the same page. What we're saying is the TI person says, well, just because you're getting what you want doesn't mean it's right. It's not logically consistent. It's not proper. It's not morally okay. It's not all these things.
Fuck morals. What does it have to do with anything in that context?
It has to do with TI.
But is moral and fairness the same thing?
Unfairness is immoral.
Well, okay, that's it. That's an interesting question. Is unfairness and
Moral and
immorality
fairness are not the same thing.
What?
It's an instance of immorality.
It doesn't. Moral and fairness are not the same thing.
I agree with Susie. You can be unfair.
No, I'm not saying they're the same thing. I'm saying it's an instantiation or instance of immorality.
I disagree because I think you can be unfair without being immoral.
Yeah, and you can be fair and immoral.
Well,
and you can be fair
okay, give me an example of being unfair and being moral.
Of just following morals. It's not necessarily fair.
No, I would say an example would be, let's say in my relationship, I'm the one who always picks where we eat. It's unfair, but it's not immoral.
How is it unfair?
Well, because a fair determination of the question of eating decision making alternates, or at least affords each party some opportunity to make decisions some of the time.
That's interesting, Eric, because when I went to eat with Kimberly, I tried to make her choose. She refused. I had to pick.
Yeah, she doesn't like to pick. So you might say it's unfair of Kimberly to make me always pick, right? But it's not immoral of her because she's not really making me do anything. She's just not choosing. It's
I don't know. That doesn't seem to be an issue of fairness or unfairness.
Yeah, you're measuring outcomes, and just saying that an equal distribution is fairness.
Yeah, that's not what fairness is.
Okay, well, if you want to define fairness as only being meaningfully used as a word when it does mean what you say it means, then fine. But
it means not only what that is. So you've got to, you're talking about fairness as a moral or as a principle is different than fairness as a sort of measurement or whatever.
Right. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, okay. I would just say that it's not the case that every instance of unfairness is immoral. That it would have to rise to the level of transgression to be immoral.
Well, the totality of judging a thing to be immoral or moral is a cumulative collection of principal terms. So, it could be that the overall equation is not moral or immoral, but it's unlikely that fairness is the only thing in the equation if you're trying to judge it as moral or immoral. So that would be the question. Can you come up with a situation where the only principle that's in the equation is fairness and it's not immoral?
Well, you have no obligation to act fairly, but you have an obligation not to act unfairly.
Well, that's what Kant would say for sure. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, you've talked about before even that if a child is drowning in a pool and you don't save him, that you can't be blamed.
Okay, it's true. You can't be held to have engaged in morally prohibited behavior.
Why?
Because you didn't engage in behavior. You engaged in a lack of behavior. Actions are judged as moral or immoral, not inactions.
I mean, I would disagree with that. If you have the capacity to save that child without harming yourself, without any other consideration besides that, you could have helped the child and you didn't.
Okay, well, that's something only you know. So you're making your own moral calculus about your own actions. That's fine.
It's like you're saying only SE actions can be judged.
Well, I'm saying if we want to be strict about understanding moral prohibition, you cannot prohibit inaction.
Well, are we talking about with the law here, or are we talking about just if it's immoral or moral?
Well, the thing is, the point being that we might agree that in that hypothetical situation, it is failing to fulfill an affirmative duty that exists, but we also have to agree that never are we privy to that hypothetical situation. We don't know what's going on in that person's head. If it's ourselves, we can pass judgment on ourselves. But it's like the difference between an accident and...
Well, you're talking about it in terms of the people, but is it immoral or is it moral? Is it okay or not okay?
Well, like I've insisted all along, positive morality, in other words, active morality, is particularist. It would be specific to the situation. We can provide hypotheticals that provide those specifics that say, if it were possible for this to be known externally, then we would be able to pass a moral judgment on positive obligations. But since it's not, we can't. But that doesn't mean that individuals don't have positive obligations. It's like you can't claim any free expression protections or rights with lying, because intention certainly plays a role in the legitimacy of an action. It's true that it's not murder if it's an accident, and it's true that...
So it's all particularist then?
No, I'm saying that...
Well, we have to consider the particular,
I'm saying that we have different kinds of liability. In other words, we might hold somebody strictly liable for damages for something that they do, regardless of their intention. But we don't hold them criminally liable unless there's mens res, or knowledge of the crime, knowledge that you're doing something criminal, an intention to commit an act rather than an unintentional act. But so the thing is, that's why we have a distinction between civil and criminal. It might be very reasonable to say that somebody who is self-evidently to all of us could have jumped in the lake and saved the drowning child. That person ought to have done so, and that even they ought to be punished for not having done so. But that would be a civil punishment. It would be like somebody sues them, right?
Well, yeah, but you're taking it into the realm of law right now. But that's not what we're talking about.
But absolutely it is, because law is how we codify morality. And so what I'm saying is a properly constructed law is a proper symbolic representation of morality. And a proper symbolic representation of morality acknowledges that while it may be wicked in some sense to not save the drowning child, it's not morally prohibited. And the reason is
but either way, it'd still be immoral, right?
Well, but the thing is, no, it wouldn't be well, okay, we have to use, let's not use the word immoral. Let's use the actual terms, which are either things are morally permissible, morally impermissible, or morally obligatory. You're saying, isn't it morally obligatory to save the drowning child? And I'm saying, well, it's not morally prohibited not to save the drowning child.
Or should each person have those moral obligations?
You mean, are they morally obligated to have moral obligations?
Yes.
Is it moral asserting that on other people?
Say, okay, let me hear. Susie, ask that question again.
Is it moral to assert morals onto other people?
She's saying, is morality objective, is what she's saying.
All right, well, first of all, nobody's imposing morals on other people. We're simply saying, if you want to use language, you're stuck with this.
Talking.
Hello, friends, and please pardon the interruption of this video that you're watching, which is the final incarnation of the video that I'm currently making, the process of which I'm currently interrupting to provide you this interruption. I offer typing services as well as other coaching services, online, personal, face-to-face, 1-hour consultations for $60. I'm encouraging everyone who might be interested in having such a service provided for them by me, host Eric, to go out and purchase that right now at twfpcollectibles.com/services, and you can click the link for the typing service. I am a professional coach in a variety of capacities and will do a professional job. I believe it's something that is worth the time and money. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of this video.
Talking.
It was still a question.
Is it immoral to impose your morality on other people?
It's not our morality.
Only if it involves transgression, right? So it's not an imposition.
No, but what would it be defined as a transgression if people don't agree on morals?
No, only if that transgression is a violation of property rights. So
yeah, but do people have the property rights of their own perception of what morality is?
You can't violate someone's property rights to perception anyway, because it's not a thing you can own. What I'm saying about property rights being determinate is if somebody's violating your negative right to non-interference, in other words, they're not just trying to say you should believe this, but rather if you don't believe this, I'm going to stab you or something. Well, then that's what then it rises to the level of transgression.
Okay, so only if something is being done, physically, it matters.
Look, a right is that which confers a duty upon another. Okay, so basically, if you're violating your duty, then you're immoral or engaged in something that is morally prohibited, or not engaged in something that's morally obligatory. What
if you have different opinions of what is your duty?
Well, then you're either right or wrong.
Two people can't agree.
One of them is wrong.
Right. Or they're both wrong.
But
Or
when
they're
it
both
comes
wrong.
when it comes to morals, you can know which is right.
Me, everybody,
Yeah,
everybody in the world.
everybody can know.
But what if they know different things and it's all subjective anyway?
That's why
It's
we're saying
not
that
all subjective
that's why we're
anyway.
saying TI is how we can determine what is moral, what is immoral. And you don't
No,
seem
but
to agree with that.
what if all
No,
ends
he's just being devil's advocate. Go ahead, Susie.
what if it all ends
Well-
in nihilism anyway? It's a meaningless opinion.
She's not being devil's advocate. She's said things like this before.
Okay,
Have
well,
I?
what if?
Yes.
Okay, look, listen. The question is, well, what if they disagree, and what if it's all subjective? The point is, if they disagree, then they have to use language to parse out that dispute. And if they use language to parse out a dispute, it always collapses down to property rights because it's the only argument chain that stands muster all the way up and down the chain.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's about something trivial, which doesn't even matter, but people have their feelings going. So they just get loud and FI instead of actually getting anywhere.
Okay, well, that's a little bit of a TE question. How can we shove the wrongness of people's asses in a way that makes them feel as though it's being gently shoved up there? That's a TE question. It's a good
Yeah,
TE
but
question,
all
not one that
right.
I'm concerned about, really.
Well, what about my question that I asked?
Okay, so your question was what again?
Is it morally obligatory that other people have morally obligatory terms for themselves?
No, it's only morally obligatory that they don't transgress.
But so it's not morally obligatory that you save the child if you have the capacity to in your own mind, in your own being.
It would be for me.
But
for sure.
yeah, what about another person? Should it be for them?
They might incur civil liability for not doing so.
No, but I mean within themselves, phenomenologically,
We don't
should
know.
Should it be?
Okay, I mean, do I think that if a child's drowning in a lake, that a person should, if they're able to, go in and save the child? Yes.
Okay.
I think they should.
All right.
Would I agree that it's morally obligatory? More or less. So functionally, yes. Literally, no.
Okay, but
You're
what
saying
if,
lawfully no.
but what if the child has a disability, which makes it so that society has to take care of it for its whole life? Would it not be good TE to just let it drown?
I mean, my position on that is a person's legitimacy in that regard links to their person's utility to others. So if a person has a loved one who cares about them, then all of a sudden their value exceeds their utility that is generalizable. In other words, they're useful to a specific other.
Would that be considered useful?
I mean, yeah. If I'm directing resources to caring for something, that means I find that thing useful. Whether it's a human child or a pet or whatever, it means I have chosen to direct my TE to that FI.
What if the only reason they're keeping the child alive is for moral obligations, not what they actually want to do?
I mean, that's the thing. It doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't save the child because you just didn't think about it, or because you actively thought, I'm not morally obligated to do that. The only difference in the calculus is that the person who's metacognated about moral obligations has fewer excuses to make to himself when he fails to fulfill a positive duty that is probably extant, but is not concretizable. The bottom line is, even though it might seem obvious enough that you have a moral obligation to save the drowning child, we can think of lots and lots of circumstances in which an individual wouldn't be morally obligated. If you can't swim, you've got no moral obligation to go in and try to save the child because you might drown yourself. If you're a super old lady who moves really slow, you have no obligation to go save the drowning child because you're probably not going to get there in time and you might not be able to make it back yourself. You're super old. If you're another child yourself, if you're a 5-year-old child and there's an 8-year-old drowning, does the 5-year-old have an obligation to go save the child? The thing is, all those people have an obligation not to go hit the child with a stick.
Talking with famous people.
What if a 5-year-old grabs a stick and tosses it in the water trying to save the child and hits it in the head?
Right. So that's why we don't have obligations to act.